Welcome back to the world's greatest podcast with listeners in over 48 states and 37 countries around the world. And we appreciate your support as we dive into another Victory Saints episode featuring fan favorite Boogie in his triumphant return to the podcast. Let me tell y'all something, little house cleaning here. We have a confession. For all of our listeners and supporters who sent in questions, we apologize. We forgot to send in the questions and answer them in this episode. We are sorry. We'll get to them next episode. We're sorry we missed your questions. We love you. We're sorry. And tell your weatherman Red happy birthday. Look at it. Uptown people like, yeah, yeah, yeah. People up in Gretna like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Mid-city folks like, yeah, yeah, yeah. People downtown, man, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Where you at, Hoodats? Pro Saints Talk is back. We bouncing back just like them Saints bounced back this past weekend against them damn Bucks. And we got the whole gang. Let's just kick it around. Jay, let's mix it up, baby. How you living tonight?
Living high, Ron. Ready to go, man. Ready to talk Saints. Good to talk Saints after a W. Hell, that's what we're accustomed to. 8 out of 10 of them, they've been wins. So good to be back on the winning side of things. Ready to dig into it a little bit.
That's what I'm talking about. George, let's kick it back over to you, buddy. How you feeling after that 34-17 victory?
Ron, as a whole, I'm lavish. Right now, I'm a bit anxious. We're having a lot of Skype issues that we're overcoming because, guys, we're about to call it. So, guys, I don't know if we'll be able to provide a premier podcast to our Rons out there. But not only are we going to provide you with a podcast, we're going to provide you with Mr. City of Yes, Mr. Brand New Airport, the one you really log in for. Our main man, Boogie, is back and better than ever. Boogie, tell the world what's going on.
What's up, Georgie? Back at it. Original cast. I'm loving it, man. Loving it. Ron was getting a little too comfortable on the mic. He was becoming like an establishment candidate. So I got to come out and call him out on a couple issues here.
And that's why we love you, Boogie. You always challenge the status quo, and I can't wait to hear so many of those as we get into it tonight. But let's just get okay. So we know we're without our stat Ron tonight. He's celebrating a little birthday with the honey. Said he couldn't do it with the dinner reservations, and we respect that. You got to respect the player in the game. But let's get into this Bucks recap. It was a bounce-back game, in my opinion, y'all. I think we just got back to basics on this one, right? That we got the running game established. We had some concerns going in, did we not, Jay? Talking about this pass rush, how we were going to respond. Let's, I guess, start there with some of the question marks that we had going into the game and some of these key injuries and what happened and why.
Yeah, Ron, I think going into it, you weren't really sure with Andres Pete out, especially after the interior of the offensive line was beat up in the prior game against Atlanta. The Saints allowed 6 sacks to the Falcons a week prior when the Falcons coming into the game had about 5 or 6 sacks all year. So what were the Saints going to do? A man down against Shaquille Barrett leading the league coming into the game with 10.5 sacks and Ndamukong Suh, Vita Vea, who we talked about last week. And all Nick Easton did, Boogie, I don't know about you. I don't even know what Nick Easton looks like because I don't think he's even dressed out for a game. And the guy looks stout. He was stoning people at the line of scrimmage. Didn't look like he needed much help. Dare I say even better than Andres Pete. And then how are we going to run the ball? We ran the ball well. Alvin Kamara looked like his old self, looked like the Kamara from the Seahawks game and not the Jaguars game. And he touched the ball 25 times, which was obviously a point of emphasis for Sean Payton going into the game after they didn't feed him nearly enough against Atlanta. So like us, Payton's going back and seeing what he can do differently from game to game. And that's a guy you got to feed because Drew Brees, he threw for 215 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. But he had a couple of out routes in this game that were 15, 20-yard passes that didn't look too pretty. So we can get into that a little bit deeper. George, what were your impressions on the game? I spent a lot of time on offense. Maybe you can talk about defense a little bit.
The name here is Nick Easton. He was the guy that everyone was watching. You rarely watch a left guard. And to be honest, guys, I was at a Sunday wedding, and then I had to watch it on my phone, and then, the bride walked down the aisle. I had to put my phone down. But then I watched the whole game last night, to be truth be told, and I was just fixated on Nick Easton because that was the guy we were watching and talking about all podcasts as the guy to watch. And he shined, and I loved it. And he looked big out there, way bigger than Clapp. And he looked like he belonged. And that was so much fun to watch and reassuring. That should be the word I used instead of fun. It was reassuring to see him out there to solidify that offensive line. But before we go give him a gold crown and a big kiss on the cheek, come on. You got to do it more than once. Got to do it for a long time to really fill that hole for Pete. He's making a lot of money, and he makes a lot of money for a lot of years here. So his contract is very team favorable to cut him after this year. But if he keeps playing like that, he'd be a discount to keep over the long haul because he played great. Great to see Kamara back in action. Man, he hasn't looked healthy since, I don't know, before the Jags game. So it's great to see him back in action. It's like Jared Cook was playing against him in fantasy because every time Kamara had a big play, Jared Cook was called for a holding call, including one of those touchdowns there. And Boogie, I just want to hear you talk again. Give your insight on how you think the offense did before we go over everything else.
So first, I thought he looked good, and he looks a lot more athletic than Pete. And he's hustling to the line. Pete's sort of sloppy. He's like a sloppy Joe, man. He's like just always tumbling around. He's been like that since he's been a rookie. So that was fun to watch. I texted Jansen on a couple throws by Breeze. Maybe it's the thumb, maybe it's the arm strength. That was a little concerning, but Thomas steps up. Kamara finally looks good. We look like a team again. So I thought all that was good. And we got good protection this game. And Armstead really picked it back up again from having the flu.
I love that play where Armstead was out in front, Bugs, and he faked like he was going to chop the guy and then stood up and ran him downfield.
I saw that on Twitter today, dude. Yeah, all the Rons had that on Twitter, man. I loved it. I love it.
Bruh, Boogie breakdowns?
Boogie breakdowns. You want to talk about the defense, Ron?
Well, before we go there, I guess I wanted to just
break down the offense. Come on.
Well, I just wanted to put my 2 cents in, and I just think this was a game where we got just back to our true selves.
Let me mention Cook. He stepped up. I liked Cook stepping up. Yeah, but go ahead, Ron.
You're exactly right, Boogie. That's why we brought the dude in, right? For those jump balls in the end zone, and he finally makes a huge play. I was a little nervous when he got up a little gingerly, but I think it was just the wind getting knocked out of him. But yeah, that was huge in this game. But I just think overall it was a game where we got back to our true selves, our true character. We are a running team, and I think we put up 28 carries. Granted, 2 of those were kneels. We still had over 4 yards a carry. 13 for Kamara, 10 for Murray. That's the kind of splits that you want to see. That's our recipe for success right now in this given offense. I don't think we can get into this a little bit more if we want to play conspiracy theorists about Breeze and the arm, but he was checked down Drew all Sunday long, and that was fine by me.
I got some numbers for you. Good.
Good.
Passes,
let's go.
Passes of over 16 yards or more this season, Drew Brees is 7 for 17 with 2 interceptions. His passer rating is 44.9 on passes that are 16 yards or more. Quarterback rating of 15.6. It's hard to move the ball down the field 5-6 yards at a time. It's easier, obviously, to score more points when you can stretch the field with those big splash plays, and the Saints just hadn't had those splash plays. And granted, this weekend they went against a really bad secondary in Tampa, but what's the outlook going to be the rest of the season when it really matters, when your quarterback can't throw it over 35, 40 yards? It's going to be hard to score.
Yeah, Jay, wow. Try not to scare the listeners too much because that gave me some chills just now. That is ridiculous. 16 yards is not too far downfield. I mean, after those two throws back to back, I kind of cracked a joke on our group me about, hey, man, are we dealing with a 2015 Peyton Manning situation where this team's just going to be carried by its defense? I don't think it's quite that bad. I don't think it's quite that dramatic. But, George, let's just talk about this is an offense that is easily set back by a penalty or a negative play. Am I right? I mean, let's look at those first couple drives where we bogged down in the red zone.
You know,
Dude, that's so true, dude. That's so true. Just go ahead, George.
So, Ron, to answer your question, Corey Johnson has found two guys in Metairie Playground that can throw the ball well over 80 yards. So let's talk to Scout Corey.
Yards.
Over 100 yards. So follow Corey Johnson on Twitter. He's found two world-class athletes at St. Bernard and Jefferson Parish to maybe throw the ball a bit farther than Drew Brees. But as a whole, Drew Brees, that's kind of been his parameter. Bird's been calling that for 2 years now. I'm not overly concerned because Sean Payton can find a way to win with Teddy Bridgewater. He can find a way with the Drew Brees with lesser arm strength. The ways that we're finding ways to win has been fantastic and entertaining and just awe-inspiring. Because look at this defense this week. We didn't have Lattimore. And all last week on the podcast, we're saying to ourselves, man, it's going to be a shootout because Winston has weapons. And now we're without Lattimore, and we're going to be Swiss cheese out there. But not so fast. PJ stepped up. GJ stepped up minus the penalty. Eli Apple looked phenomenal. He had that great pass breakup where he hammered it with his right hand. And Ron, Nick Easton came from the underworld and played terrific. How about big disappointment of the midseason? P-Rob comes back and is actually impactful and beneficial to the defense. That I love to see. Kiko Alonso. Boogie, take it from here, my man.
Kiko was awesome. He's an athletic guy too. Before the big thing on him was, oh man, he's just a run stuffer. But he was decent in coverage, man.
Sniffing out screens, instinctive.
You like Kiko, huh? Yeah, he's the man. He's the man. But yeah, PJ stepped up, hard hitter. I thought Eli was good. My boy Marcus Williams with the INT. I feel like sometimes Marcus Williams is a little full of himself, man. He like posts videos of himself with interceptions on Instagram. And then he posted some stuff on Instagram when we lost, like on that late game interception. So I thought, he weirds me out a little bit, man, but I won't get into all that stuff with Marcus Williams. But the big thing for me is the story no one is talking about is Davenport, Ron. Davenport. Where is Davenport? T-Rex is playing more snaps than Davenport. This is the second week in a row where Davenport's snaps have declined. And it could be because he's injured. Last week, and I tweeted this to, every beat writer. I had the binoculars on him. He had this big cast on his arm, and he was not performing up to par. And then this game's got the same big cast. Seems like he's, not playing as well, and he's not playing as much. But when you tweet it out to all the beat writers, oh, no, Davenport's fine. Davenport's fine, man. He's just in a rotational thing with T-Rex. Well, no, man, this guy is we traded 2 first-round picks for this guy. This guy's not a rotational player. Ron, you're part of the establishment in this argument too. You're like, oh no, man, T-Rex is playing.
No, Boogie, I got some numbers for you, Ron. I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, wait. Cam Jordan, Ron, you texted me. Oh no, man, Cam Jordan's on the field, so someone has to get some rest. No, man. Davenport, we traded 2 first-round picks for this dude. He needs to be on the field the entire game. Not T-Rex. What was T-Rex? Georgie, a 3rd-round pick? No one's talking about it. I think Davenport, I don't think he's been benched. I think he's hurt, but no one's covering it because I guess the Saints aren't allowed to talk about that he's hurt. What do you have to say about that, Ron?
Well, first off, I don't appreciate you calling me out as part of the establishment, but I will corroborate some of your findings. First off, let everybody know that Boogie with the binos last week was the first one to break the news on a broken arm on Andrew's Pete. We all mocked him. We all criticized him. We said, oh, classic negative Boogie. But, man, he was Bino Boogie, and he was on the money on that one. So believe him, y'all, when he says, where there's smoke, there's fire. And I said I would corroborate this, and I will. I don't view this other podcast as competition because we're all on the same team here. We all love the Saints. But if you are a fan of All Saints podcasts, you look, Saints Happy Hour was a lot of the inspiration for this podcast. Andrew Juge on that podcast did his film study, Bugs, and he noticed on one particular pass rush, a bull rush, Davenport essentially went one-handed into it, had that arm down at his side, and just used his helmet as his other hand just for leverage, just put his head in the dude's chest. Then on another play, Jameis Winston was going to scramble, steps up in the pocket into a rush lane, and Davenport had a chance to extend that same arm and reach out maybe for an arm tackle, maybe even just slow him down, get a handful of jersey, and he didn't extend it intentionally. So there's starting to be some growing evidence of a lingering or looming injury for Marcus Davenport, I'm afraid to say. Jay, hit us with the numbers.
Yeah, Marcus Davenport played 74% of the snaps against the Bears several weeks ago. The last 3 games before the Bucs game, he played 47% of the defensive snaps. Against the Bucs, to Boogie's point, he only played 34% of the defensive snaps.
And look, I do think some of that is Cam Jordan doesn't come off the field, and Trey Hendrickson is coming back healthy and was very effective at the start of this season. So I have to think that is part of it, but I cannot ignore this looming injury. But
wait,
George,
Ron, what does Cam Jordan being good and being on the field have to do with Davenport's playing time?
Because fresh legs are better than tired legs, dude.
So that would mean that Jordan gets off the field, not Davenport sitting pacing around talking to Tyler Stallworth on the sideline.
Boogie, we're talking about an all-pro as opposed to a second year. Come on, man.
But 2 first-round picks, dude. He needs to be on the field.
I agree. But okay. George, I'm going to bring you in, and let's talk about something that's not so negative, and let's talk about that guy, that all-pro, and the game that he had this past week.
Oh, wow. Okay, Cam Jordan's great. We all know it. It's like drinking beer. We've given this speech before. Cam Jordan's phenomenal.
Don't give me that ho-hum.
I want to get into the hot topic, dude. Don't give me that lame duck question if Cam Jordan's good. Yes, everybody, Cam Jordan's fantastic. He's fantastic. I want to get in the hot topic, but one, I love what Boogie just said about the cocky DBs. Boogie, every DB is cocky. You want Marcus Williams to be cocky. God forbid if he wasn't. He turned to a Ken Crowley. Let Marcus Williams be weird on Twitter. Look at Mike Thomas on Twitter. He's psycho. It's okay. I love it. Keep it going, Marcus Williams. Do what you do. Keep getting those pick sixes. But Davenport, we can't apologize for him. I know there's been a lot of us that said, oh, he's going to be not so good or had a lot of questions. And some of us in this podcast say he's going to be good and get 10 sacks. Look, I've been wrong about a lot of things, but a lot of the concerns we had preseason are coming true. And these injury concerns are a concern. This is a guy we heavily invested in to win now. Having a great Davenport would bring us into the Super Bowl. We're going to get there regardless. But having 2 great DNs, 2 great Cam Jordans is priceless. It'll make all the great quarterbacks terrified of us. And yes, T-Rex is a 3rd-round pick. That's confirmed. I was a bit late on that. I should be your substitute stat, Ron, too. But I have a question for you, Ron, because you're asking the question, bring one back to you. I'm sorry I didn't properly answer your question about how great Cam was, because he was phenomenal last week, as he's been all season, chasing down Jameis Winston. And, Ron, I want you to think big picture, take a big sigh here, and think about your answer before you answer it here. Was last week the last time the Saints go up against Jameis Winston with the Bucs?
Sigh. Yes, without a doubt, dude. Jameis Winston, he's the gift that keeps on giving for Saints fans. The dude is just, He's full of material for podcasts like this, whether it's talking about eating a W or just giving the ball away. I mean, he was terrible. George, I kept saying it throughout the game, how on the money that stat was that you dropped last week about the longer you make him hold the ball, the more you have to make him think, the worse it gets and the better it gets for the Saints defense. But what I thought was surprising was some of the defensive schemes that Dennis Allen was running. I mean, you talked about our boy P-Rob. Boy, what a comeback he made. I mean, he was in there on a lot of QB pressures because they were sending corner blitz like it was going out of style. I did not understand where that was coming from because it did not play to what you were saying, George, but it did take him off his first read. It did make him pump fake, make him clutch it a little bit, and then it was downhill after that. And I do want to just go back to my main man, Cam Jordan, a sack and a half, which I think that was generous to give Von Bell the half sack. I think it was all my boy Cam Jordan on the 2 full sacks. But he hit Jameis all game long. He was in his grill all game long. It was a beautiful sight to see. He was all jacked up. I think he had a couple speed bump McGee's trying to block him this past week. But yeah, I have no doubt in my mind that Jameis Winston is done. I have family in Florida that are Bucs fans, and they wish they could get my boy Joe Burrow, Boogie. So let me put it to you, Boogs, since you love to hate on all the Twitter hype on Joe Burrow, who would you rather next year in some miraculous scenario and the Saints had their choice between Teddy Bridgewater or Joe Burrow? Who is it, Boogie? Tell the fan.
No, dude, don't drag LSU.
Teddy Roosevelt, bro.
Don't drag LSU questions into the Saints podcast, man.
Hey, hold on, Ron. Too. Let me weigh in on this, Dad.
Yeah, wait, Ron. I saw how you snuck that in, man. You just went full Ron. You just went full Ron, man.
The reason why people like Boogie get so worked up about Davenport because it's like we talked about before the season. It's critical that the Saints have somebody opposite Cam Jordan that can rush the quarterback because of what we talked about earlier on this podcast with Drew Brees not being the guy that he was 3-4 years ago. If he's just throwing for 215 yards against the Bucs, and if the Saints average 17 points a game like they did last year in their last 7 games of the season down the stretch, and I'm not trying to say the sky is falling, but this is the reality, that Deontay Harris is going to have to be the best punt returner in the league. Will Lutz can't miss another field goal. Thomas Morstead is going to have to be the punter that he was in September that won him NFC Special Teams Player of the Month. The offensive line is going to have to be the best in the NFL. The defense is going to be – they're going to have to be a top 5 unit. And Marcus Lattimore, he's going to have to be one of the best corners in the NFL to make up for the offense not being an elite group. Everybody – the way the Saints are going to win the Super Bowl is everybody else picking it up like it did when Bridgewater was in there, because it's not like there's anybody with superpowers in any other position that's just going to propel the Saints to get there. So to get over that hump of getting, past the NFC Championship, past the divisional round, that's why you need the emergence of a guy like Davenport, and that's why it's disappointing that we haven't gotten it yet. And then in regards to Jameis Winston, he's in a contract year. They're talking about franchise tagging him. I believe, George or Ron, Boogie, when you franchise tag somebody, that means they're going to get an average of the top 5 players at that position. You're going to pay a guy that's thrown 13 interceptions in his last 5 games, top 5 quarterback money, that's thrown 76 interceptions. He came into the league 5 years ago. He's thrown 76 interceptions in 5 years, and he hasn't played full seasons every year. He's throwing 107 touchdowns. To give you some perspective, Breeze has only thrown 42 interceptions, and he's thrown 25 more touchdowns. So, to me, I hope the Bucs do re-sign him. And you can obviously see the skill set. You can obviously see the potential. But potential gets you fired. And if he's making these mistakes in year 1, even year 2, that's excusable. You can say, man, look at this guy's future. But you can't be doing it in year 5.
Agreed, Jay. And look, hindsight's 2020. I'm no NFL scout, but I was happy when the Bucs drafted Jameis Winston because I think we could have all seen this coming from the maturity level. What was the amount of growth that you could actually expect out of him? I mean, the guy just never, and he still doesn't seem like he's grown up into an adult at all. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that he was chasing up behind Marshawn Lattimore to poke him in the back of the helmet after the whole Mike Evans dispute. So, the guy, to me, he doesn't belong as a franchise quarterback. And you're right, Jay, it is top 5 salary, top 5 average, and there's no freaking way I'm paying that dude $30 million to throw that many interceptions. The guy's terrible. So I'm all with you. I guess what's the segue here is the Panthers have a very similar question on their hands, right, with Cam Newton. And if I'm a Saints fan, I don't fear Cam Newton. I kind of wish that the Panthers would bring him back. George, what are your thoughts on that?
I was with a lot of Panthers fans this week, and they kind of want to bring Cam Newton back because they think Kyle Allen's been a bit figured out lately. In the past 4 games, he's thrown 9 interceptions, and you're not going to win many games giving the ball up like that, like Phillip Rivers is recently. So, no, they're evening out. They were scary and chomping on our heels for most of the season, and now, no. And we can put them to rest right here, right now, this weekend. Get after young Kyle Allen, send some corner blitzes, more interceptions with the secondary that we love so much. Von Bell's going to make some plays here. Williams can take a part of this young quarterback. I really like our chances here. What do you think, Jansen?
You're exactly right. Falcons came in there. They extended the streak to 2. You see that a lot with young quarterbacks. Go see Gardner Minshew the first couple games when there's no film on those guys. They're out there ad-libbing, just making plays, and then as defensive coordinators are able to see the body of work and see 4 or 5 games, all of a sudden they get figured out. And this is a Saints team that I think we got a question later in the show. Somebody asked about there being a potential letdown. No, there's no letdowns at this point in the season. At this point in November, you already had your letdown, and that was the Falcons game. So, yeah, I expect – we're not doing predictions right now, but I expect the Saints to come out with a similar intensity to what they had last week against an opponent that can't measure up.
Well,
the Saints.
Jay, I wouldn't say letdowns. I would say it's natural to expect a lull. I mean, it's a long grind of a season. It's hard to maintain that same focus, that same dedication, that same intensity week in, week out. Plus, we have injuries. We have anomalies that happen with the penalties that happened last week.
They have a great example to point to as a coaching staff 2 weeks ago when they lulled into the Superdome and got their ass kicked by a team that just won 1 game. So there better not be a lull.
100%. That's kind of why I want to rope you in, Boogie. How does Peyton motivate this team this week? He's got a Panthers team that may not really scare the Saints that much. He's coming back home to that fiance. Are you concerned about the distractions off the field, Boogs? I know the answer to this question, but answer it for the fans.
Yeah, well, first off, I agree with you, Jay, that Saints came in sleepwalking. Dome was, a little mellow because everyone was tied from the Tigers game. And then Saints come in, they get their ass kicked, okay? And it's like they get penalty after penalty. They can't get the ball 3 yards down the field. It was pretty pathetic. And then, I don't know if we were losing. They have, Peyton got engaged. It's on the big screen. Man, that's fine. But I don't want to see that. Yeah. I don't want to see that during the Saints game. All right. I want to go and win the game and get a 1 seed and go to the Super Bowl. It was nice, whatever. They put it on the big screen. But with Belichick, I'm going to quote an article that I texted to you, Ron. Would Belichick get engaged on a Friday night before a divisional game? No. I mean, come on. You got to plan the party. You have it on your mind. I mean, whatever. You can't tell me that you weren't focused on that. But whatever. Peyton got focused. We need him to go full Ron. I don't know, man. He coached his ass off when he was single. So let's see what he does. Getting to the Panthers. I hate the Panthers, man. I don't like Riverboat Ron. I don't like Cam Newton. I don't like their uniforms. Their owner. Oh yeah, man. I'm from Pittsburgh. I don't like the organization. Okay. I think they should have been called out on all this other stuff they did when they had Richardson. They got a pass the Saints had a coach suspended for gambling, for whatever, Bounty Gate, and they got away with all their stuff in their organization. So I don't like the Panthers. I think Kyle Allen's going to throw 3 picks, but we'll get into game predictions later.
I got a question for you, Ron, because I love how you play point guard here. You divvy up questions very well. You handle this like Drew Brees in the 2-minute offense. But, Ron, so we saw Allen win a bunch of games. When he first came out, no one had any tape on him, as Jansen just alluded to. They know what they were up against. We saw a very similar occurrence with Teddy Bridgewater, and he went 5-0. Do you think that the water would have leveled out similarly to Allen with Teddy Bridgewater, and we just took him out right in the nick of time for Breeze to keep the offense going? Or do you think Bridgewater would have kept ascending like a good stock?
It's an interesting question, and I mean, it's pure speculation, right? But the way the team was playing, if all things stay the same, right, and we come out of the bye week and we lay an egg like that on defense against the Falcons, I don't think there's anything that Teddy Bridgewater is doing to change that team. So I think the outcomes of these games are probably the exact same, and that's going to sound crazy, but yeah, I mean, Breeze had a heck of a game the first game back. He really put up some gaudy stats, so I don't think Bridgewater would have done that. But do I think the team around Bridgewater was playing so well, and do I think they could have kept that fire going for a little bit longer? Yeah, I do. Yeah, so I don't think it was something where teams are going to figure out Bridgewater because they were having to figure out the entire Saints team. The Panthers are pretty easy to narrow down. It's Christian McCaffrey, and that's it. So, you put Kyle Allen in situations where he's got to make plays. Yeah, he's going to make some mistakes, is he not?
And Bridgewater seemed to get better each game from game to game.
Exactly, and you're seeing Kyle Allen get worse and worse and worse. I mean, George, what's the number? 9 interceptions in the last 4 games. Yeah, so that's
correct.
something that we did not see out of Bridgewater. So, let's flip it around. And let's talk about our quarterback and the matchup that really we've been blessed as NFL fans to watch this over and over again. But Luke Kuechly is like the white DeMario Davis. I mean, he's been doing it for so long. He is such an incredible linebacker on the other end, so instinctive in pass coverage, just knows exactly where to be and can jump up and make those picks. He's got a ridiculous number of interceptions as a linebacker if you look up his stats. But Jay, what are some other matchups that you'll be looking for at this game? Not just Breeze versus Kuechly trying to outsmart each other at the line of scrimmage there. What are some other matchups you're looking for?
Yeah, one that comes to mind, for most Saints fans, when you look at the Saints and you talk about the personnel, Mike Thomas and what he's done the last 4 games, I think he's gone for over 100 the last 4 games. He's averaging 114 yards a game this season, just putting up ridiculous numbers. And I heard the commentator last game, Spielman of Fox, he said something along the lines of, he's not the best in the game, but he's one of the better ones in the game. Like, I've been guilty of it too, saying that this guy is not the most skilled in the game, but he gets the most out of his ability. But, George, I think you wanted to talk about this a little bit later in some regard. The statement should be that Michael Thomas is the best wide receiver in the game. Like, go back, look at the numbers this year, look at the numbers last year, look what he is with Breeze, look what he is without Breeze, and just what he brings from a consistency level at that position. There's nobody better. You'll see guys like Mike Evans, for example, against the Saints. He's got a game with 0 catches. When's the last game Mike Thomas had below 4 catches? Rams playoff game, I guess Boogie would tell me. But this guy is the best wide receiver in the game, and he needs to be known as that on a national level. So, Ron, I know I'm not exactly answering your question, but Dante Jackson, the LSU standout, the Tiger, bro, against Michael Thomas is one that comes to mind. And then you talked about Luke Kuechly. With the Saints not able to make those big plays, I'd love to be able to throw it over number 59's head and have some plays behind him where everything's not in front of him. Because, man, this guy, he's the type of player that can track Kamara all over the field, sideline to sideline. I remember when they had Thomas Davis too, and those guys laterally are just so good. And then the Saints have been so good against the rush. Christian McCaffrey a little bit earlier on in the season was getting some mention as an MVP front runner. The Saints, a stat that's been out there, Saints haven't allowed a 100-yard rusher in 35 games now. So I want to see what the Saints defense does against Run CMC.
Jay, don't forget about your boy Eric Reed, bruh, LSU. Boogs, I kind of want to bring you in just for that emotional take again. We talk about how good Mike Thomas is on this podcast on a weekly basis. I make sure of it. And that is 100% factual, and it's so deserving. But it's only as good as it keeps going, right? Because, man, if you even take half of this dude's production next week, we're in trouble, right? I mean, Jay was just talking about, oh, man, it'd be so nice if we could throw it over 59. Only if it's 16 yards or less, the numbers tell you. So, Boogs, how concerned are you that this offense is just Mike Thomas and then it falls off a cliff?
Yeah, well, first, Jay, how did you know that I was thinking that the last time Mike Thomas had a bad game was the NFC Championship? Wait, another person who I just have a bad taste in my mouth on why I'm upset with Davenport is T-Rex was on the field during that, he was hurt and going, like 80% when Keenum threw that throw to Diggs. Anyway, that's my problem with T-Rex also. Anyway, back to Thomas. Ron, we talked about this all summer, man. Why didn't we go sign a receiver in the offseason, a veteran receiver like Randall Cobb, who's doing pretty well with the Cowboys? I do not understand why we didn't sign any type of veteran wide receiver. And we're just in the same spot as last year when we signed our boy, the X. I mean, we signed him, I think I looked it up, November 8th. So, a little over a year and a week ago. So, and there's all these little rumors that we may sign Dez again. But according to his Twitter feed tonight, that's going to be a no. But we needed a receiver. I mean, we brought in Cook, and he's done okay. But we should have brought in a veteran receiver. And I don't like when I tell people this under the overpass. They're like, oh, bro, we got Keith Kirkwood. No, man, we can't count on Keith Kirkwood. Oh, and Traquan Smith, man, he just has not developed. And every time I hear about Traquan Smith, I hear someone, oh, the Saints love him. He has a lot of potential. Well, you know what? That's all great and everything, but we're not in the potential business when we have Breeze at 40 years old. You know what I mean? And Traquan Smith, I don't think. I mean, y'all tell me if I'm wrong. I don't think he's really stepped up as a second-round pick. Seems like he's always getting penalties. His helmet's off. I mean, he's all over the place, man. Third-round pick from whatever Central Florida. But I don't know, man. He's just I don't know. I guess he's a good blocker. Peyton likes blockers.
Well, that is true. That's why Austin Carr's still on the team, I think. That and, we got him to do a promo for this podcast. But yeah, Boogs, you're absolutely right. We talked about it on the midseason report card that, the entire receiving core that has not stepped up into this wide open, vacant slot of wide receiver 2 and 3, it's a shame on them. But George, let's talk more about the Panthers. You said you were out at a wedding this week, out behind enemy lines, in fact, out in Atlanta, talking with some of these Panther fans. Were they getting into any of these matchups? Were they talking about maybe how they're going to stop this Saints offense? What are some of the keys you'll be looking at for this game this Sunday?
Man, Panther fans don't talk football like we talk football. I know more about the Panthers than all those guys that watch the Panthers. So, no, they didn't enlighten me on anything. They're all just selling their stock in Kyle Allen, and I think that might be justifiable. I want to see our boy Nick Easton do it again. He's got Gerald McCoy going against him. That's a big old boy. Let's see him do it again. Another matchup is our corners, who, hey, we're probably going without Lattimore again. We don't know that officially. We record this podcast on a Tuesday. We're not going to know until later in the week if he's going to be back. They have Curtis Samuel. They have DJ Moore, two pretty good receivers. Let's see if they can make some plays on our corners that are a bit banged up right now. That's the main thing I'm looking for. But let me jump into the prediction, Ron. Let me jump into the prediction. We're going to keep pounding, keep pounding, keep pounding. That's their silly motto over in Charlotte. We're going to pound them. We're going to keep pounding them. They don't belong on the field. They don't belong contending for our division. They're out of here. We're going to pound them. It's going to be a fun Sunday in the Dome, 30-10. Jay, what you got?
I think so too, George. I think this is the Saints need to step up, and if they're truly a Super Bowl winning contender, they need to start proving it right now, and they can prove it by margins of victory. I'm thinking along the same lines. I'm going 34-13, more defensive touchdowns, more special teams touchdowns. Give me a plus 50-yard play for the Saints offense. Let's go, baby.
And not just yak, Jay. Look, for all the people that were concerned about Breeze this past week, it's a proven fact that he doesn't play as well outdoors as he does in the dome. So you got to factor some of that into the grip, but also we are totally forgetting this dude is not 100% coming off a thumb injury. So I can expect some throws like that, but I think back in the home conditions, I think we do see one fly. Maybe we do see Traquan or Ted Ginn get loose deep on this deep, but I'll tell you where the matchup is in my book.
A deep 18-yard hitch, Ron.
Hey, that's what I'm talking about. So, look, the Panthers, 27th in rush D for yardage, 32nd in the league. That is last for all you people counting in touchdowns on the ground, and 29th in yards per attempt for rushing. So, exactly. It's going to be the Latavius Murray show. I honestly don't even want it to be the Kamara show. I think that number this past week, 12, 13 carries, that's the max I want Kamara getting. I think we got to let Latavius eat this week, and I think he will. Now, I'm gonna pull it back a little bit. I was saying 42 last week, and I was a little out of character, just like the Saints were getting back into character. This team is going to settle. I think a good offensive game is in the 30s for them now. This isn't like 2018 where we were putting these gaudy 40 burgers up on people. So I think it's going to be 33-17. And I think McCaffrey's going to have 5 times as many receiving yards as he will rushing yards, because that's the kind of game that they're going to have to play. We're going to stuff it up. So, all right. I am so happy to announce that we have a second weather report for the second week in a row. My boy, Red, the weatherman.
Hey, Rons, it's Red, the weatherman. And whether you like it or not, the Saints sit alone on top of the NFC South with a record of 8-2 as they look to take on the Carolina Panthers with a record of 5-5, who are in a dogfight for second place in the NFC South. Anyway, let's get right to the weather, as I expect Saturday's small cold front to drop the temperature a little bit, but not too much. I expect a high of 60 degrees out there as you tailgate under the overpass, Rons, with a 5% chance of rain and 8 to 12 mile per hour winds out of the northwest. I expect the tailgating conditions to be optimal, Rons. Get out there early. Don't worry about ice chests. Just bring your cardboard boxes with a little bit of ice, and you should be fine. Anyway, Rons, let's get to game time conditions as we do play inside of a dome. I expect the weather inside the dome to be an optimal, crisp 69 degrees at kickoff, and I expect the Saints to put the Panthers out of the playoff picture. Anyway, Rons, don't forget, it's Red, the weatherman.
That sounds chilly, weatherman Red. Can't wait to see you under the overpass, where you will be honored for your birthday and our Ron of the Week. And we appreciate everything you do for the podcast. And we're going to have a nice birthday cake for you like we had for Ron to celebrate your birthday. Now, Jay, how about that French Quarter Fantasy Realty Minute?
This is Jansen Patagna for your French Quarter Realty Fantasy Minute.
Marlon Mack was injured last week with a fractured hand against the Jaguars. Jonathan Williams, a name that Saints fans are familiar with, spent the 2018 training camp with the New Orleans Saints before he was cut, filled in admirably for Mack. I think he compiled over 100 yards in that game against the Jaguars. Another guy is Jordan Wilkins for the Colts. Now, he's the guy that they say is going to replace Mack. He was hurt last week. So look at those two names as you try to break into the playoffs this week or try to keep that lead, that cushion going into the playoffs. Also, speaking of playoffs, remember that the playoffs are upon us in a couple weeks. So start looking ahead a little bit. They tell you not to do that in football, but this case, as a fantasy owner, not to be so dialed in on this week, but look ahead as well at week 14, week 15. Is there a defense out there that has a favorable matchup? Not this week, but week 14, 15, when it really matters, pick them up. So start looking ahead a little bit. So that is this week's French Quarter Realty Fantasy Minute. Appreciate you guys listening. Appreciate the feedback. And remember, nobody knows this city better than us. That's French Quarter Realty.
All right, y'all. My fantasy team, nobody cares about, so we'll skip right along. And look, that just brings us to what do we have on tap this Sunday, George? We got another Under the Overpass session. As you already alluded to, we're going to have the sheet cake for our boy Red. We might throw it at Vetter, Steve Aoki style. It's a running joke. Everybody's loving it. But, man, I'm going to be enjoying the good times with all the good people and looking to see if – Easton can answer the call again, just like our man Boogie answered the call tonight, filling in for StatRon. So I think that was a huge addition to the podcast. Boogie, we appreciate you, and I would like to give you the mic for one last final rant or any closing comments.
I think it's going to be a close game. Divisional opponent. Kyle Allen's going to come out strong. I feel like since it's a noon game against the Panthers, the dome will be a little bit mellow. I think that'll change because Pro Saints Talk plus the sub will be together during the game, which I think is going to be awesome. It may come under the overpass before 11 a.m., Ron, this week. I'm all in.
I'll believe it when I see it.
All in. Listen, we'll have the
all in on
out.
this Sunday.
We'll have the binos out. We'll be on Easton. We'll be on Davenport. We'll be on Peyton. We'll maybe be on, who's in Peyton's suite because that seems to be a hot topic during the game now. But, man, we're all in. We got to get the win, and we just got to win. We just have to win, man. We got to do it. Marcus Williams needs another pick, okay? I'm all in on the Marcus Williams train, Georgie. I'm all in. I got to have confidence in my boy because we're going to need him down the line.
And he's got confidence and love for you too, Boogie. Everybody will be under the overpass. There are rumors swirling. The Newman crew will be out there this Sunday. And like Boogie just said, we're all going to be watching the game together, all going great together. Boogie's going to have a blood pressure right at even keel as Jansen hands him a LaCroix as we celebrate another Saints win. And guys, we're going to be under the overpass together, and you're cordially invited. Bring Jansen a baby. He'll kiss him on the forehead. Rob will tell you some corny jokes, and Boogie will pace around nervously till kickoff. Guys, that's where you can find us. I hope you like us. Jay, take us out, my man.
Wait. I got one stat correction in honor of our man StatRon tonight. Earlier on this podcast, Jay, you mentioned, Easton, has he even dressed out yet this year? I will have you know that he was active weeks 1, 3, 4, and 11. However, did not receive his first snaps until this past week, week 11. Had to get you, Jay. Love you.
Yeah, you're right. Hey, we don't do a whole lot of advertising for this program. I got a second cousin out in Virginia that said, man, I've been listening to other Saints podcasts for years. Just turned y'all on after you recommended the show to me, and man, you guys are good. So, hey, we're not out there on your Facebook, on your Twitter, on the Instagram, maybe a little bit cramming it down your throat, but do us a favor. Tell your buddy that likes the Saints, hey, these guys are pretty good, and spread the word. We're about 250 listeners per podcast. Let's get it up to 500 and 1,000 for the playoffs. Hey, we're out here. Love y'all. Looking forward to seeing you on Sunday. Who dat?
Please, brothers used to be hopping out of trees, wild hard New Orleans. Lord, I heard they kicking colors in the St. Bernard. The point behind this whole rap, this city is cold as any other on the map. New York this, California that. Forget that talk, this is where it's at. They talking about California like it's so dope. Let me see Cali walk through the Calliope. The project wards all on time. New Orleans #1 in this rhyme. New Orleans, New Orleans, New Orleans, New Orleans. New Orleans #1, and you know that's true. And if you disagree, forget you. All right, since we got y'all bucking, y'all know the usual. You better look for the nearest show, cause this bad boy about to get wild. We gonna find out what ward is kicking it, y'all. That third ward's kicking it, hell yeah. That fifth ward's kicking it, hell yeah. That seventh ward's kicking it.
And you already know this is another Andrew Simmons production, the world's most talented man, hooking us up on the ones and twos, sounding terrific. He handles this podcast. He handles Propels Talk. He handles Triple Win Workplace. He can do graphic design. He can do social media marketing. He can do videography. Whatever you need him to do, call him up. He does fantastic work.